Your host, Sergio Sanchez.
Appreciate you joining us for a special edition of Hour 1 of the Sergio Show. And I want to say a very, very big thank you to folks participating today. We went straight to the coast, as we always do, it seems, when we have hurricane coverage on KURV. We always start in Cameron County, Willacy County, so we got great representation right at the coast today. Barry Goldsmith, of course, right there at Brownsville, our National Weather Service office stationed there at our Brownsville airport. He's joining us in our conversation. Jim Pigg is our fire department chief, South Padre Island. He knows emergency response when it comes to SPI. That's usually one of the first communities that gets evacuated. Tom Hushin, emergency management chief for Cameron County. Guys, thank you for joining us today. You can participate online, folks. If you have any questions or comments, producer Zach Cantu behind the scenes, and he's taking care of all the questions. You'll have any important stuff over to us. Well, Barry, they say it's going to be a busy season. It really doesn't matter because if I recall in South Padre Island Valley history, when they said it was supposed to be a slow season, we're the ones who wound up getting a storm, and it only mattered because we got hit by that one storm or a few storms that hit the Texas coast and South Texas coast. So by your assessment right now, Barry, what do you expect might happen as far as the flow, the airflow, trending, storms going west, all those things? What do the tea leaves tell you, Barry?
So good morning, everybody, and thanks again for having the National Weather Service here this morning on this really important topic. So, if I could tell everybody what the tea leaves look like in August or September, even late July, at the beginning of June, I probably would be on a yacht somewhere making millions of dollars for that accurate forecast. But unfortunately, we don't have the skill to do that. What we do have the skill to do is look at big picture features that contribute to the potential numbers of storms out there in the Atlantic Basin. And remember, the Atlantic Basin is a big place. It goes from the west coast of Africa all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and then ultimately up the eastern seaboard and all the way over to places like Portugal, Spain, even England, the British Isles get hit by remnants. So it's a big chunk of real estate. So when we say a busy season, we're talking about that entire chunk of real estate. But we are forecasting a busy season again, up to 20 named storms. Of course, last year we had 30. And there are reasons for that in the big picture. They are warm waters in the Atlantic Ocean, which we've had for years. That's the fuel you need to generate big storms. Ample moisture coming off of the West African monsoon, which goes into what's known as the main development region, that area from the Cabo Verde Islands all the way over to Hispaniola, where the big storms tend to form. And then we have a La Nina / neutral phase of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which favors low wind shear, as does the West African monsoon pattern, which is also known in general as the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, of which we're in a positive phase. And that leads to continued warm waters, continued low shear, and the moisture coming off of Africa. All those are unfortunate friends of hurricanes to develop.
Professor, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
When everything you just said about Africa and the Atlantic, you said low shear. That means whatever African dust is kicked up, that's not going to play much of a factor in the Atlantic. Is that what you're saying?
So African dust is a really hard element to predict week in, week out. And if it occurs over a 1 to 2 week period, it would certainly disrupt the moisture flow coming off of the West African monsoon. But what we look at is the availability of the moisture to go underneath that dust plume or go through the periods where there is a lack of dust, which happened last year. We had plenty of dust out there, but there were windows where it didn't occur. And during those windows, we had at 1.5 storms in the Atlantic Basin. So all those other ingredients will be enough to allow things to go. So a lot of friends of tropical cyclones, as we call them, meaning depressions to hurricanes, not that many enemies, and that explains why we're forecasting another above average season for the entire basin.
Might it be as crazy where we not only do we need the English and Greek alphabet, but maybe go to Arabic symbols and numbers? Could it be even more busy than it was last year? Because I don't recall at the beginning of the season last year that they'd be saying, guys, we're going to go very deep into the Greek alphabet to try to name storms this year.
So the good news, Sergio, and everybody, is we have a secondary list of regular names like we have
Okay.
with the normal list. And when we exhaust the names through WXYZ, we will be going into a new list, a supplemental. It actually has, I believe, over 23 names on it. So there will be no more Greek alphabet beginning this year. Can we get there? Well, sure. I mean, the top end forecast is 20 named storms right now. If we get above 23, 24, 25, we'll be moving into that secondary alphabet of names, but they're just like anything else. So if we have Anna early, we have another name with an A that comes up later if we actually get there. So hopefully we won't get there, but yeah, no more Greek alphabet this year.
Barry Goldsmith, National Weather Service Office at Brownsville. You're listening to News Talk 710 KURV Special Edition, Hour 1 of the Sergio Show. New special, RGV Hurricane Season 2021. Barry, you just heard, we got Jim Pigg. He's the fire department chief over at South Padre Island. Tom Hushin, also with emergency management from Cameron County. Your questions, comments, Zach Cantu is monitoring that off air at News Talk 710 KURV Facebook Live. If you'd like to onboard something there, and Zach will send that over to me. Let's go to Jim over at South Padre Island. He's our fire chief. Normally, Chief, how long does it take to evacuate South Padre Island? I know it's a small population. It balloons on the weekends with tens of thousands of people, but in a situation where, it's a weekday and we got a storm breathing this way last minute, within 24, 48 hours, we got something develop and we need to get everybody to take their trailers off the island. How long would it take to evacuate South Padre Island before we shut down the causeway, Jim?
It's going to take several days. Even though it would be a Monday, we're in the middle of the summer, just starting the summer, but we're busy. We have traffic over here every day. The parks are full. We have the KOA, we have East La Blanca Park. Then we have the parks out on the north end as well. So it's going to take a while to get everybody on the same page to where they can start evacuating. Then we also have our marinas that we have to get out of harm's way. We've got boats in there that people need to move out. So it's a process for us to get everyone evacuated and get them off the island. And then you have congestion on the bridge too, especially if this is something that pops up and it gives us very limited time to get everyone off the island. If we do have a hurricane coming in, we always would like to have a prediction coming from the National Weather Service to where, we would have some time, but it doesn't always work that way. So we have coordination with Cameron County Emergency Management, National Weather Service, and then other outlying partners to get everybody off as fast as we can, as safely as possible.
Yeah, days. Sometimes we don't have that. I recall situations where in the tropical cradle, as I refer to it, just south of us in Yucatan, something pops up and within 36, 48 hours, it's already breathing on us. And that doesn't give you much time to evacuate. If you need days for folks to go out there and hitch their trailers and leave South Padre Island. You ever been in a situation, Jim, and which I apologize, Chief, how many years have you been with SPI Fire Department?
I've lived on the island over 20 years now, and I've been with the department for 17.
So you would know. You ever been in a situation? I don't recall. I'm always impressed at the beginning of a tropical system headed this way. There's a super long line. It looks like a crazy Saturday, weekend or Sunday night or Friday afternoon. Super long line on South Padre Island. And it's all these trailers and everybody hitched all their property and trying to get off the island. You ever been in a situation where you do all lanes off the island on east and west, everybody going in one direction with maybe just like one service lane going back to the island? We've ever been in a situation like that?
I don't recall a situation like that. That's not to say that it's not impossible to do. We'd have to coordinate with TxDOT. We wouldn't have to be able to get everyone off. I mean, there would have to be at least one lane that would be coming eastbound to the island. But yeah, we could contraflow on one of the lanes going off the island and get 3 lanes going off for sure. But again, that would be something that would have to be coordinated through the county, through TxDOT, and ourselves to get everyone off. And then in conjunction with Port Isabel as well.
They shut down the bridge to the island at what constant speed? 45 mph winds? Or
45 sustained.
45 sustained, yeah. What do folks on South Padre, with property on South Padre, what do they need to do right now to make sure they have proper credentials and proof that after a hurricane, they can get access to the island, get access to their property? Is there a special program?
There is. There's a hurricane stickers that we provide. the emergency stickers, and you can get those through City Hall. You have to provide proof of residence, proof of property, or proof of business over here. And you can get those stickers again at City Hall. Just go over there and show that proof of residency.
Can they get it online, Jim? Because I know we got a lot of property owners over here in Mission, McAllen, Edinburgh.
To my knowledge, you cannot get it online. I can follow up with that and try to make sure that that's accurate. But to my knowledge, you have to go down and show the proof and get the sticker at City Hall.
10-4. You're listening to a KURV news special, RGV Hurricane Season 2021. Big thank you to Pueblo Tires for providing us today's broadcast. Your questions, comments, welcome at Facebook Live 710 KURV. Tom Hushin is our Emergency Management Director for Cameron County. Tom, when it starts raining cats and dogs around here, which areas in Cameron County do you start looking at with a nervous eye, thinking, okay, well, let's see what goes on at that part of the county, because I know it's going to fill up with water real quick.
All of them. We always look at the Santa Rosa area, La Feria area, and then outside of Los Fresnos, Brownsville, depending on where the storms pop up. A good example was Saturday. We talked to Barry on this one where a storm just popped up right there on Palm Valley and in Santa Rosa and dropped about 3 inches of rain at a very quick rate, which caused some street flooding. So when those happen, it's unpredictable. We try and get the best we can. Barry gives us all the information that we need, but some days it just depends on where you're at, which is particular for this weekend. We know that there's going to be some rain, but we don't know exactly where those big storms are going to pop up. So we try and get prepared throughout the region.
That's Tom Hushin, our Emergency Management Director for Cameron County. Where is the EOC during a hurricane? Where do you guys put up the
We're
flag?
located here at the 964 East Harrison, right under the district attorney's office. We have the whole floor. We have our own EOC. That's where I'm at right now.
That's floor number 2?
Second floor.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask because I remember years ago, Carlos Cascos was judge. That was eons ago. I remember he showed me the EOC. It was like in the basement. It was like
it was, and that was the first thing our county judge did was like, why are we in the basement? So right. he moved us out immediately over here to the second floor.
Yeah, I know downtown Brownsville has a propensity to flood every now and then. We continue our conversation in this news special, News Talk 710 KURV, RGV Hurricane Season 2021. Your questions, comments, welcome at News Talk 710 KURV Facebook Live. We continue our conversations with Barry Goldsmith, National Weather Service Office, Brownsville. Jim Pigg, he's our Fire Chief, South Padre Island. Tom Hushin, Emergency Management for Cameron County. Thank you for tuning in to News Talk 710 KURV. And a very big thank you to Ricky Ivy and all the crew at Pueblo Tires for today's special news program. Pueblo Tires, an essential business, always open. And now with more inventory, great inventory equals great prices on tires. Ricky Ivy with Pueblo Tires.
Right now, we're seeing the supply side catch up. Even the tier 1 products like Bridgestone, Michelin, Goodyear, their products are back online. I would say 80% fill rate, which is pretty good for tier 1. And tier 2 stuff that we source from like South Korea and from Taiwan, they're pretty consistent at about 90% fill rate right now. What we've been having trouble with last couple of months is freight, getting the stuff on the water in the cans, and then the cans to the port, and then from the port to the distribution center. Been kind of a juggling act, jumping through hoops to get the product in. Here lately, we've been able to buy right because of volume, and regardless of everybody raising their prices. We had a great deal of inventory ordered months ago, and we were able to group the stuff together and buy it correctly. And for June, July, August, I don't see any supply problems. We've had extra stuff come in. We're just passing on the savings. There's so many sizes and plies and styles and stuff, but we've been thinking about all of the holidays and the sales events and giving a lot of thought to the 4 at a time that go out the door. And those are package deals. If anybody wants to know what's there right now, we have live chat, and that's staying very, very busy. It's amazing how many chats we do in a common week. And it's a great resource for anybody who knows that it's there. You just go to shampoozy.com or pueblotires.com, and there's a live agent during business hours, and it's Tire Guy. He'll help you out.
And a very big thank you to Ricky Ivy and all the folks at Pueblo Tires. Look for them online, pueblotires.com. Thank you for today's KURV News Special.
Thank you, Brownsville, and thank you, Rio Grande Valley, for listening today to News Talk 710 KURV, the Valley's official home for Fox News Radio.
Time is 9:21. This is News Talk 710 KURV, hour one of the Sergio Show. We're flipping into a news special today. Compliments of Pueblo Tires RGV Hurricane Season 2021. Our guest, Barry Goldsmith from the National Weather Service Office, Jim Pigg, or Fire Department Chief, South Padre Island, and Tom Hushin, Emergency Management for Cameron County. In a situation, Barry, in a situation where we have a hurricane headed this way, let's say it's a whopper, category 4, God forbid, maybe 5, and it's positioned perfectly where maybe the head of this sucker puts us in the worst place where it's blowing towards the coast and creating a massive storm surge. I remember seeing some of the maps of the areas, even in Brownsville, that would be negatively affected by rising water, a storm surge that comes all the way into Brownsville. How strong, how big of a storm surge would we need to see in order to, even areas like you, Barry, there at the airport, where you guys would see some water in the neighborhood as a result of a massive storm surge? How high does it need to be?
So we'd be looking at a surge of somewhere over 20 feet at the coast. And then from there, we calculate based on the land and the flow of the water coming in, how much of that water will stay above ground level. So if we get 20 plus feet in the surge at the beach, then the highest values will ride through the ship channel, which is a bad news for the Port of Brownsville. And then some of that will spill over, not only through there, but also just through the land itself, reaching our location by the airport, with potentially up to 6 feet of water depth nearby and maybe up to 3 feet in the building, which of course would render us inoperable. And in a lot of neighborhoods in the east side of Brownsville, like between Minnesota Avenue and Indiana, which is 511, could have 3 to 6 feet of water as well. So that would make our office a little bit of an island, but we'd still have water too. The good news on that is it's a kind of like 1 in a million shot, almost a moonshot event to get that kind of surge here. It's more of an absolute worst case scenario. More reasonable worst case scenario is one that could still produce 15 feet of water that would probably get a little bit into our office location or nearby to put us onto an island, if you will, and then flood the neighborhoods nearby. But the Port of Brownsville, the ship channel would be significantly flooded. Places like Port Isabel, Laguna Heights, Laguna Vista, some of the east side of Los Fresnos, the water would curl in there. Anyone who lives on the Arroyo Colorado and nearby, like Arroyo City, where it's not bermed up, they may have some issues there. And of course, South Padre. Now with South Padre, the water will just kind of flow over the island because it's a barrier island. So that the heights of the water may not be as high as places like the ship channel, where you have a thin area for the water to flow and it has to squeeze through there. And when it squeezes through, not only the ship channel, but the Arroyo Colorado and other canals, it rises even higher. And then that water spreads into nearby neighborhoods. So one of the good news pieces here in the valley compared to, say, Corpus, is that most of our population is outside of the reasonable worst case scenario surge. So obviously it doesn't include the tourist population on the island, but most of Brownsville, basically all of Brownsville, all of Harlingen, most if not all of San Benito, and on west is not subject to the surge threat. They certainly are subject to the rainfall threat, as Tom mentioned before. So whereas in Corpus, you're talking over 100,000 people, in some cases 200,000 people that are literally in direct hit of a 3, 6, 9 foot plus storm surge value above ground. So that does make us a little bit better off that way, but there's plenty of other impacts that can happen from the hurricane that we don't want to mess around with here.
Mandatory evacuation orders. Jim, U.S. Fire Department Chief, Now, the way I've understood it, Chief, for the longest time now, 25 plus years of doing this, uh, in Cameron County, it's the judge that has the final say. Everybody, you guys need to evacuate. At the city of South Padre, it's the mayor, though, right? The mayor's the one who says mandatory evacuation, yes or no.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. In a situation facing, like Barry was saying, God forbid, a moonshot scenario, which we've been to the moon. Worst case scenario, we've seen Katrina, what happened with an area that's literally underneath the water, just holding off the water. We hope and pray we never see something like that on the island. But how high does the forecast storm surge need to be for the mayor to say, gang, everyone needs to be off the island? All hotels, everybody, you need to get on every boat and go back inland. How high does a forecast tide need to be, Jim?
Well, it's kind of an open-ended question. What happens is we could have a Hurricane 1 hit us, and if it hits us in the right direction and hit the right location, a Hurricane 1 can do a lot of damage, where we could have said, well, we should have evacuated. But what we're looking at for the most part is a Hurricane 2 and above. What's going to happen with that is going to be, again, which location it's going to be coming in, which direction and which side of the island it's going to hit. That's going to play a huge factor in how we're going to get everybody evacuated. But once we pull the trigger on it, that's when everybody goes into effect, and that's when everybody starts scrambling to get things taken care of. So it's just going to be, in coordination with everyone that's on this call on how we're going to do it. It's not just us sitting over here. It's going to be a group effort from Cameron County all the way over to Hidalgo County, because once we start evacuating, these people have to have a place to go. So we have to have coordination with everyone to get everybody off safely and get them to a place where they have shelter.
Tom Hushin, Emergency Management, Cameron County. I know county crews, along with South Padre City crews, you guys start moving a lot of sand and start reinforcing those berms and putting up some few sand walls out there. I know, Tom, I know that you've been there a long time. Jim told me he's been there 20 years. How long have you been doing emergency work or EOC work at Cameron County?
Well, remember, I started in 2003.
Okay.
And then I left for a little while and then came back. So it's been quite a while, but I've always been doing this for about 32 years now.
Yeah, you've had a few rodeos, especially here in South Texas, you've responded to. On the issue of storm surge and all these berms and sand dunes and all these things that you put out there, how long does it take, Tom, for the county in conjunction with the city to properly reinforce those little sand hills to try to protect as much property as possible?
Well, remember, that's an ongoing thing that we always do. We're always looking at beach mediation, trying to make sure that those dunes are higher, trying to keep that going. Just remember, when we do have a storm coming in, this is a coordinated effort between all of our cities. And we start off with this as soon as we find something in the Gulf of Mexico, about 120 hours out. We start with our phone calls. We start working together, finding out the direction. And if it does look like it's going to be an impact, we work with all of the mayors. In fact, we've been doing that for a year and a half, haven't we, Chief? Been working together on every situation. We have weekly calls, daily calls, whatever it is, just to make sure that we all work together. That's the only way that we can make sure everybody's safe, is if we all work together on it. So as far as the dunes, we've been working on that for years. Every time there's any kind of a storm, we're out there looking at it to see what kind of beach erosion we have, because we know how important those are, and we keep them high as possible.
Tom or Jim, at the highest point, these dunes, these little hills, because I'm just guessing, standing and looking at them from the beach, how high are they? 8, 9 feet? What's the highest point that these things reach?
Out on the county end, there's dunes that are 20, 30 feet high. Wow. In some places. Yeah, they're up there. Not so much in the city, but all along the coast, especially out north, they're a lot higher.
Yeah. But if you have a prolonged storm situation with all that water coming over and over again, we're looking at substantial erosion, though, for the island, which is probably a real big concern when it comes to some of the high rises and buildings on there. It's 9:30 already. You start talking about something interesting and the time flies by. Barry Goldsmith, National Weather Service Office, Jim Pigg, South Padre Island Fire Department, Tom Hushin, Emergency Management, Cameron County, our guests in these and this RGV hurricane season news special. You can join us at Facebook Live, 710 KURV. Very big thank you to Pueblo Tires for today's broadcast. From Pueblo Tires, Ricky Ivy with some advice on how to save big with 4 out the door on tires. And of course, it's hurricane season. Some advice from the crew at Pueblo Tires.
So a lot of people upgrade their pickup to 20-inch rims. There's a lot of people who drive a car like a Charger that has 20-inch rims. So a pretty common size would be like a 275, 40, 20, or something in that genre of low profile, high performance tire. And this is a 20-inch. This is a high performance. It's got all the ratings and everything. And we're doing 4 out the door for $399.99. And that includes installation, balance, valve stems if you need them, tax. This is out the door. That's an unbelievably good deal. But like I said, the store for details, you got to call the chat line, make sure that it's a go for today.
Hurricane season is an indication the summer has started. Give folks the seasonal tips on what they should do to prepare. People are going to be hitting the road left and right.
I've been through 4 hurricanes here in the valley, and they're no fun. So it's hurricane season. If you're like me, you want to be ready to bug out. You get your loved ones on the mule and you go inland. You need to keep your main vehicle maintained. Keep it fueled up. Your maintenance schedule, it should include, depending on your mileage, of course, tire, brake maintenance, oil change, suspension, transmission oil check, coolant, very, very important, brake fluid. Personally, I keep a blanket. I keep tools in my ride. I keep repellent. I keep snacks. I'll even keep a flashlight, jumper cable, umbrella. I keep a basic change of clothes. If there's a hurricane and it's got its bearing on us, I think this is probably the best advice I can give anybody. Leave town before the crowd.
And a very big thank you to Ricky Ivy and all the folks at Pueblo Tires. Look for them online, pueblotires.com. Thank you for today's KURV News Special.
For victims of drunk or drug driving, your grief is unique, but you're not alone. You'll always have a place at MAD. Call the 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
Fox News, I'm Lillian Wu. The White House is warning companies to protect against ransomware attacks. Officials noting there's been a significant hike in the frequency and size of the hacks. This coming in the wake of attacks against a meatpacking company and Southeastern oil pipeline.
The FBI says Russian-linked ransomware group REvil is responsible for the latest cyber attack that shut down U.S. meat producer JBS. JBS is the largest meat processing company in the world, responsible for producing 25% of the beef right here in the U.S. And while it's based in Brazil, the attack was directed at servers here in the U.S. and Australia.
Fox's Anita Vogel, and the Supreme Court limits the reach of a federal computer fraud law. It overturns a former Georgia police officer's conviction for misusing a government database. America's listening to Fox News.
Broadcasting from the Valley's All-American Truck Headquarters studio at PayneAutomall.com. You're listening to 710 KURV.
Time's 9:34. This is News Talk 710 KURV, the Rio Grande Valley's news radio, talk radio authority. It is an honor that you join in and tune in at this time every day. Special edition, hour 1 of the Sergio Show. We've got friends joining us today to talk about tropical season 2021. We're hoping that, at least for us, it's a quiet one. They say it's going to be a very busy one. Doesn't matter. It could be a slow one, but if we get one storm around here, it keeps everybody busy. We remember that hurricane season. Just like, for example, one name that pops into my head, Hurricane Dolly, back in 2008. Let me go to Barry Goldsmith from the National Weather Service office at Brownsville. Most memorable Valley tropical system comes to your mind, Barry? Just specific to the Valley, what pops into your head?
So I'm going to go way back in the time machine and say the Labor Day 1933 event. And while there may not be too many people alive to tell the tale, that was a storm like Hannah. Now let's imagine Hannah with the track that it was on, moving across the King Ranch and then into the Mid Valley, like Elsa Ed Couch, and then on into Mexico through Starr County. Now imagine that one intensifying to a Category 3. Instead of landfalling up on the King Ranch and the Barrier Island, the Padre Island National Seashore, it makes landfall dead on to South Padre, and then races on through or moves at a steady clip, exiting the valley in like Spar and McAllen, with a Category 3 storm moving at good clip. What we had there was a 13-foot storm tide. Exactly where that was, we don't know, but there were some buildings that were considered Brownsville buildings that were flooded on the east side. We had over 13 inches of rain in Harlingen, which, as Tom mentioned, could certainly cause quite a few feet of water depth. And then we had winds that gusted to 125 miles per hour, at least as far west as Harlingen and Brownsville, and maybe 100-mile-per-hour winds that were gusting potentially all the way over to far McAllen area, the metro there, before it moved off. So it's got all the prongs that worry us. It's got the surge, it's got the flooding rain, it's got the wind. And while Beulah is very well remembered, Beulah was largely known as a flood maker for most of the valley. There certainly was surge and wind problems in Cameron County, but it slowed down and then kind of looped over, near Laredo, and it just kept dropping rain. And the river problems were legendary. We fixed a lot of that. But for all three significant impacts, that Labor Day 33 storm is the one that scares me.
Yeah. I think when you were mentioning Hannah, of course, I know what you're talking about. It was late July last year, right? Is it like it was a third week in July?
Yeah. So Hannah, ironically or coincidentally, made landfall just 3 days later, 2 to 3 days later, actually, than Dolly on the calendar. So people here are thinking August, September, why should we care about that when it's July in the 21st century? But boy, we don't want to let our guard down, because the other storm I didn't mention that was the sum of all fears that didn't happen, knock wood, thank God, etc., was Allen in 1980. It was a Category 5, just 120 miles due east of the mouth of the Rio Grande. And fortunately, it slowed down and took a jog to the north. And while the valley got hit, especially Cameron-Willacy, it could have been a lot worse had that made a beeline straight in as a Category 5. That would have been something to remember and still talked about today. But we escaped Allen, but it just gives us pause to know that kind of situation is out there in a very rare case, but we have to be prepared for it.
It's such a huge piece of inventory, deep South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, such a wide area. Hannah, as you said, it came into the King Ranch, and then it curved southwestward, and I think it skirted Edinburgh and McAllen, brought some uncomfortable wind and rain there third week of July last year. Yeah, not only did we have pandemic, but we also had a hurricane to deal with last year. That's Barry Goldsmith with the National Weather Service office at Brownsville, Jim Pigg with the South Padre Island Fire Department, Tom Hushin with Cameron County Emergency Management. There are some, what do I call them, Tom, permanent shelters in Cameron County, like little domes and areas like that you've set up in Cameron County thanks to FEMA?
Yeah, we have those. We call those, for a hurricane, it would be a shelter of last resort. We really don't want to put people in there. We want people to leave and get further inland. Because if people have an idea that there's a dome, which at full capacity is maybe 350 people, but you have a population in Brownsville of, 250,000, they're all not going to fit in a dome. So we have to look at everybody moving, everybody heading up north, finding family, friends, going to visit them for the weekend. Just get out of harm's way.
If it takes days, Jim Pigg from South Padre Island Fire, if it takes days to evacuate a small population set, relatively speaking, compared to the valley, to evacuate them, bring them back to shore, can you imagine, Tom, Jim, how long it would take to evacuate Brownsville, Harlingen, and get them over to Highway? I will call it what we all call it, Highway 281. I know it's 69, but the Highway 281 area in the far McAllen area, because in a scenario where storms headed this way, the 69 leg at Harlingen, they would shut that down going north, right? The contraflow would be at 281 in the far McAllen area, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it depends on what time you're leaving and how close it is and the angle,
Oh.
but usually that area is going to be closed down.
Guys, it was hurricane. I want to say it was, okay, so it was Katrina, right? It was Katrina first, and then it was Rita, right, Barry? Back in 2008, correct? It was Katrina, and then it was Rita. They were both Cat 5, right, Barry?
2005, actually, Sergio.
2005, okay.
It was, yeah, Katrina, of course, was New Orleans and Mississippi, which people forget was a major storm surge event there. And then Rita was kind of like that shadow piggyback event, and we all saw what happened with the evacuations there, and unfortunately fatalities that occurred on I-45. So that's another interesting topic of discussion we can get into. But yes, those were the two
That's
storms.
where I wanted to go. I don't think the Valley's ready for something like that. Even if we get in a contraflow situation, I don't know if we really should go there, just as messaging the county judges as best as possible. Because I went to Houston in 2005 for Rita. It was post Katrina. Everybody got all crazy. They saw what happened in New Orleans and Metro Houston. 6 million people, half of them, 3 million, hit the freeways, and it was a parking lot. I was there with my dad and my mom there in their vehicle. We're just kind of sitting on 59 South trying to head to the Valley. And that's one freeway that has like 5 lanes on one end and 5 lanes on the other end. And it was all contraflow. And you couldn't get out of Houston. So I don't think we're ready to do a contraflow situation in the Rio Grande Valley if we're to get in a situation like that. I don't know, just want to get your thoughts on that, Tom.
Well, we have one planned. We've been working with TxDOT, with DPS, everything to get one planned. We haven't had to activate it yet, but the amount of manpower that it would take to be able to close up both lanes of the highway because of all the entrances and exits that we have. And it's not just the highway. Remember, we have to have law enforcement all up and down the frontage road areas because of the traffic lights and moving all the vehicles out. It is a humongous coordinated effort. But we know that we can rely on our other members from Border Patrol, from TxDOT, from every city. We have talked about a plan. There is a plan written, but it has not been tested, and that's something that we don't want to do. That's why we always tell people, leave early. If you don't feel safe in your residence, or you don't feel safe that it's going to be flooding and you need to get out early, because if you wait too long, it's going to be difficult.
You know how it is, Tom. And people will wait to literally the final 12 hours before landfall, and they'll hit the freeway. And I think the nightmare scenario would be to have a highway 281 north, 2 lanes this way, 2 lanes over there. They're all going north, and they're super clogged, and people run out of fuel. And you know how it is. It takes forever to set up proper fueling stations.
And surgery, what we have to make sure is we don't want people to wait for somebody to make a decision for them to leave, where they're waiting for a county judge or they're waiting for a mayor to order a mandatory evacuation. They need to make that decision on their own and start leaving early. If you have a fire in your house, you're not going to wait for the fire department to tell you, you need to get out of your house now. You're going to leave when you're in danger. And that's what people have to realize. They shouldn't wait for somebody to give them a mandatory.
Plan now, plan ahead. Expect to spend some extra time in San Antonio. Don't go to Corpus because the storm probably.
No, don't go to Corpus.
Take a turn. Go up to Corpus Christi. Tom Hushin, Jim Pigg, Barry Goldsmith, my guest right now. RGV Hurricane Season 2021 news special till 10 o'clock this morning. You can post any questions, comments at News Talk 710 KURV Facebook Live. Barry, back to you. How do you personally prepare as the chief, one of the chief meteorologists over at Brownsville? How do you personally prepare as a family man for hurricane season? What do you do?
So the main thing for me is to get all of my work ducks in a row ahead of time, meaning like a week or so, to know where I'm going to deploy and where I'm going to be, and get that off the table so I can then prepare my home and prepare to, move I have pets here. I have to find a way to move them if it's an absolute or reasonable worst case. And then of course, protect the home. Right now I have plywood, so I have to get that up, get that up, and that can take some time. Just make sure everything's braced and held down correctly. Check the roof, check the walls, check the garage. Make sure I've got my pool all ready to go, all that kind of stuff that I have. Take care of all that after I've got my work orders to know where I'm going to be. And that could take 2 days. And we do have that time. We're actually given, I think, administrative time to go and get our homes ready. Why is that so important? Because the last thing that we want to do when we're helping partners like Tom and Chief Pig and TDEM and Border Patrol and everybody else is to think about what could be going wrong at home. We need to make sure. And so that includes, in my case, pets, but spouses, children, have them in a safe place. And that safe place may be a San Antonio. Set all that up in advance. Know that plan and have that plan ready to activate and get that done early so that you can dedicate the important time to work and not have to worry about those things. Because once that worry creeps in, that can really affect everything from not only your work life, but your home life. And, it's not the way you want to go when you're in an emergency. We're here to help the public get through it all. I mean, after all, it's our core mission is to protect life and property for people in the Rio Grande Valley. And so any distractions is not going to help that cause. So ahead of time, get all that stuff done. And then when we're getting into the last mile of preparedness onto response and recovery, we're spending all our time 100% doing that with a little bit of sleep in between and coffee, of course, to keep on going.
Yeah. Get your supplies now. Buy your toilet paper now before there's another run on all the toilet paper, people. You mentioned plywood. What a nightmare scenario. Like right now would be the proper time to measure your windows if you need a fresh stack of plywood to cover all that stuff and keep it in your garage. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's like 3 times the price that it was this time last year. But hey, that's reality right now. For other reasons, plywood is real expensive at the moment. But yeah, you think it's bad now, you wait till hurricane season hits and all that stuff disappears. So get your supplies now, including plywood. For the smarter than the average bear listening to 710 KURV, you guys need to take care of business right now and start getting all the supplies. Let me go back to Tom Hush. And normally there's a hotline, Tom, like I don't want to say the number wrong, but there's a specific 3-digit number you can call and register family members who might need help to evacuate. You fired that up again for this year, Tom?
That's every year. That's 211.
Right.
It's a registration for people who may need care or resources to evacuate. But we always tell everybody, because it's mainly for the elderly that we ask that register for that, is if you have a family member that can get you out of harm's way, I suggest you go with that route. And the reason is because the state of Texas, if we do activate that and we start evacuating through state resources, it's on their time. So if it's 100 or 72 hours out and it's sunny skies and we go over to pick you up and you say, I'm not leaving yet, it's not stormy, why do I want to leave? Which always happens. Then that's your only shot. Because remember, everybody, all of these resources have to be out. If it's a Cat 4, Cat 5 coming down and we know it's going to hit, at least 36, 48 hours out, they need to start moving. But it's sunny skies and people don't want to leave. And that's the problem. That's a scenario that we always have. So and the other thing really quick is if you use state resources, it's not comfortable. They're going to put you in a area up in San Antonio. It's a gymnasium. It's a cot. That's why we always say, just go with family members, move in, check into a hotel, do something for that time. Because if you use state resources, their sole purpose is to keep you safe. It's not for comfort. It's to keep you safe. And people think they're going to get a nice hotel out of it. No.
How many people, Tom, for Cameron County, how many people in the past have registered on that 211 emergency evacuation list? Ballpark?
We've had a couple of 100, 1,000. But remember, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, because every year the system gets purged. Everybody who registered the previous year gets taken off and you have to re-register.
Wow.
And then what we do is sometime within the next month, we're going to make calls to everybody who's registered to see what they have, what their needs are, so we can have a list for ours.
That's Tom Hushin, Director, Emergency Management, Cameron County, along with Jim Pigg, or Fire Chief, South Padre Island, and Barry Goldsmith from the National Weather Service Office. You're listening to a News Talk 710 KURV, RGV Hurricane Season News Special, presented today by Pueblo Tires. Time is 9:50. Happy Thursday. A big thank you to Ricky Ivy and all the crew at Pueblo Tires for today's KURV News Special.
Words of advice. Check your tires' air pressure. Do it monthly. If you have an average vehicle, it's 12 years old. That means you do not have a tire pressure sensor in the wheels of your vehicle. So check your tires' air pressure. That's very basic. Antifreeze ethylene glycol. It's wonderful stuff. You can run your vehicle at normal operating temperatures, but the additives in the coolant, the antifreeze break down. Your water pump is going to go out if you don't exchange the fluid. You've got to get the fluid out and put new stuff in and do it at the recommended interval. Most vehicles that we see come into the store, it's right around 100,000 miles that should be done. I recommend even 75,000 miles. Check what vehicle you're driving, check the owner's manual, or use a search engine. Make sure that your coolant is fresh. That's something we see very often here in the Valley. Aside from that, tires, alignment, oil change, just the basic stuff in repair, and be ready to bug out. That's my advice before everybody else does. And
all the basic services can be done at pretty much all the stores, the Pueblo Tire stores, to get the vehicle ready for travel.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, we're an honest company. If there's a situation where you need to take it to a dealership, if you still have warranty, we'll send you on your way. You don't have to pay for a basic inspection. You just show up, we'll help you out. We'll even give you free air. I do want to say something to everybody out there. We love you and we keep you in our prayers. We live here just like you do.
Find the latest deals, package deals on tires for out the door. Go to PuebloTires.com and use the live chat.
Powered by
Got about 7 minutes left in this program. RGV Hurricane Season News Special, News Talk 710 KURV, presented by Pueblo Tires. Barry Goldsmith, National Weather Service Office, Jim Pigg, or South Padre Island Fire Chief, and Tom Hushin. He's our Emergency Management Director for Cameron County. Jim, tell folks South Padre Island and coastal communities how you want them to prepare for this hurricane season. What do they need to do, Jim?
Start now. Like everybody's mentioning, the shortages of lumber, the prices of lumber, if they're going to prepare to board up, they need to be prepared now. It's hard to do. People don't necessarily want to adhere to that advice, but you've got to start now. Get some water, get some gallons of water, stock up on your necessities, anything that you would need if you were to just be without power or water for a while. Fill up your bathtubs with water. That's a source that you can use after the fact. But yeah, you've just got to get prepared and be ready, and keep an eye out on the weather and listen to your city officials.
Yeah, you think because of the COVID lessons, I hope that we learned lessons and how supplies disappeared. Do you think now more than ever, Tom, people would adhere to developing, filling up a storage bin full of supplies this year, batteries, water, things like that, just to get them by for several days? What do you put in your emergency pack, Tom? Tom Hushin, Emergency Management, Cameron County.
Well, make sure we have water. Medication is very important as well. A lot of people, they can't get their medication refilled. But that's why we order what we call a disaster declaration. Once a disaster declaration is issued, now you can get your prescriptions refilled, even though they have a little bit of time left, because it could take you longer than a week. It could take you may not be able to get that medication for a little while. So you need to make sure you're stocked up on that. And the other thing is insurances, making sure that you have your flood insurance. Look at your insurance policies, making sure they cover wind-driven rain, making sure that if you are in a flood area or you need to make sure you have flood insurance. It's a low cost to pay for that peace of mind. And you need to do that early, because as soon as there's a storm in the Gulf, insurance companies won't allow you to get it. And it takes 30 days to come into effect. So you need to do that early as well.
Barry Goldsmith, National Weather Service Office, Brownsville. Tell me a little bit about some of the forces at play right now in the tropics. What are you looking at as far as water temperature? I know in our conversations with Joe Lundberg at AccuWeather, which one of the resources we count on here at KURV, also the gang over Channel 5, they've got AccuWeather as well. I know he was mentioning something in the Northwest Caribbean over the next week or so. I may just expand a little bit on some of the homework that you're doing these days over at the Weather Service Office in Brownsville.
So the Northwest Caribbean is a place that we'll be watching into the second week of June, beginning next week. The interesting about that is it's not unusual. We have had a number of Caribbean forming events in early to mid-June. Many of them go into the central or northeastern Gulf. I used to live in the Tampa Bay area, and without fail, I did a Hurricane Expo, and typically a day or two after or that day, something was coming on the west coast of Florida. So, and it came from the Northwestern Caribbean. But there are exceptions. I mean, we had Bill, the first Bill, not this year's Bill, in 2015 that reached the coastal bend. We even had a swirl last week that went into the coastal bend, didn't do anything except for add some more rain to the mix up there. And we had Cindy, I believe 4 or 5 years ago as well, that came into Southwest Louisiana in late June. So it just gives us a reminder that the season's underway. So if something were to go in the Northwest Caribbean, you know, we just look at it to say, oh, okay, the season's underway. It gives us more reason to do what Tom and Chief Pig have mentioned, which is get all that preparedness stuff done now to get active and be ready for when the peak does arrive. We do have a website for that, by the way, that people can look at that has a lot of good preparedness information now. You just search on National Weather Service Hurricane Preparedness, and there's 5 different pages of tips. And the first one is know your risk. So everybody has their own unique risk, whether you're a family, an individual, or a business. And when you can assess your risks, you can do the preparedness you need, such as making a plan, building a kit, knowing what your family will do. And then obviously an evacuation plan, because your home may not be able to withstand the kind of winds that we're forecasting. Or more commonly, can you handle, say, 20 inches of rain in 8 hours falling at 2 to 3 inches an hour? If you live in Santa Rosa, La Feria, Northwest Harlingen, Raymondville, we've seen parts of Weslaco year after year the last 3 years. That's the sign to get out. We're forecasting that kind of rain. That's the evacuation sign, because you really don't want to deal with flooding in your home and not being able to move around. It's just unfortunate the damage that could happen, but better to have that than to have you involved with it. So follow all those tips of the trade and we'll be on our way. But yeah, the Northwest Caribbean in mid to late June, not unusual. In fact, the atmospheric pattern would suggest anything that forms out there would tend to go towards the Eastern Gulf, but it gives us a reminder of why to prepare now and not wait.
10-4. Well, we're here at the top of the hour into the show. Just a program note for Judge Dredd Fred, the producer. We're going to go over just a little bit because I want to give our participants enough of a chance to review their notes and something they really needed to communicate to us. Let me start with you, Tom. Tom Hushin, Emergency Management, Cameron County. If in your notes you got something you really needed to share with us today, go ahead, Tom. That way we can close out your segment.
My best thing is don't wait for somebody to tell you to leave. If you feel like you're in danger, evacuate early.
10-4. Thank you, Tom. Chief Jim Pigg, South Padre Island Fire Chief. What you want to say? Final thought, Jim.
Reiterating what Tom just mentioned, people that are on the island also need to realize that they don't have that excess time. Once those winds reach 45 miles an hour, that bridge is shut down. They're stuck here. And they need to realize that if that's the case and there's a mandatory evacuation, most of the first responders are going to be gone as well. So if they are stuck here on the island with the bridge closed, they're on their own until we can get back over here. So people that need to leave from the island, they need to leave a little bit earlier than what the people that are more inland have the opportunity and that they have the availability to leave early. So just be prepared.
Yes, sir. I got to squeeze this question. And I'm sorry, Jim. I know I should have asked this earlier, but I got it because it's always been a recurring question year after year. If in a worst case scenario, Jim, on the island, and yeah, you got a nasty storm surge and a slow moving storm and they made the mistake of staying on the island, where would people shelter? In a high-rise building, like on a upper floor? What's the conversation in South Padre if you're stuck on the island in a bad situation like that?
At their home. I mean, there is no place there. There's no open availability on high rises or anything where people can shelter at. If they stay and we've evacuated, because the first responders, they have to get we have to get our fire trucks off the island, our ambulances off, because we can't take the chance on having those destroyed. So those have to leave. So there's nobody here to move people around. And once that wind picks up, you have down power lines, you're going to lose power service, you're going to lose phone service, you're going to lose water. So you're here, you're on your own.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, a sobering reminder of what we need to do, especially on the island in the event of a bad storm. And Barry, final word for you, my brothers. Check your notes, something you really wanted to share with us today.
So 3 things really quick. They always say use 3s. First is it only takes 1 storm to make your season. Never, ever forget that. 2, just because we had Hannah in 2020 doesn't mean we're going to wait 12 years for the next Hannah or Dolly. It could happen this year. If the atmosphere wants to play that way, it will. And number 3, there's more to the story than the category. Please, please listen to our forecast of storm surge, of wind, which is the hurricane category, and especially of rainfall. We could forecast very heavy rainfall like we had in Houston with Allison in 2001 that cost billions of dollars in flood damage, or Harvey, for example, 2017, here in the Valley, and that could be your cue to evacuate. A lot of rainfall, a lot of flooding. It only takes a tropical depression or a storm to do that. Listen to that information. We'll all be sharing that with you in advance.
Gentlemen, thank you for being a phone call and a text message away always and trying to keep the public informed. We really appreciate your public service every single season. Tom Hushin, Cameron County Emergency Management, Jim Pigg, the South Padre Island Fire Department, and Barry Goldsmith at the National Weather Service office at Brownsville. Thank you to Ricky Ivy and all the crew at Pueblo Tires for making this entire hour possible today. RGV Hurricane Season 2021 news special. It will stay on our Facebook page. We'll try to grab the audio and put it on our SoundCloud as well so you guys can review and share that information. Time is 10:02. This is KURV Edinburgh.